Look, I'll be honest, I'm really hungover, so today's video might be a bit of a struggle, but I thought, you know what, the good people who watch the MARKIE channel just wouldn't be able to survive without a MARKIE upload today, so I've decided to power through and get a video out just for you guys. So if that isn't worth a subscription, I don't know what is. I'm really putting my body on the line. But yeah, as you can probably tell by the title, we've actually made it a hat-trick of Try Guys videos over the past few days, because the Try Guys have actually just released a new podcast going into a bunch more detail about Ned Fulmer, the situation, and how it was dealt with. Now, in my first video on the Try Guys, we looked at the tweet from the Try Guys talking about how their podcast can be postponed, and I did say, like, it'll be interesting to see if they do talk about this situation, and I didn't think they'd go into that much detail, but it turns out this whole hour-long podcast is on nothing but Ned Fulmer and the situation. But like I said, it is an hour long, so what I thought I would do is make a video kind of going through the points that stuck out to me and give my opinions throughout, because they go into a lot of detail. They talk about the time period where they knew about the situation but it wasn't made public yet. They talk about how the situation has affected the business and themselves emotionally, and then they also talk about how Ned has been quite sly and trying to make it seem as if he's on good terms with the Try Guys to try and help his reputation, and they're not happy about it. So the podcast starts off by them saying that when they first found out about the situation, they knew they would have to do a review, but of course this situation has never happened in their business, so they didn't really know how to go about it.
We knew that it required a swift action, legal action, figuring out what we as co-owners could do, what was within our realm, so that was a lot of lawyer calls and then finding an HR representative, like what even is a review internally? What does that even look like?
And then they also go on to say is that they just kept finding out more and more information and the situation was just getting worse and worse.
But really that first week where we said, okay, we think this thing has happened that's bad. Oh, this thing definitely happened. And so each day we were getting new details and reacting accordingly, and so...
Now, first of all, I can only imagine how stressful that must be when you're finding out more and more information and you think, oh, it can't get any worse, and turns out it actually did. But also what that kind of insinuates to me is that Ned wasn't completely honest about the situation, which, I mean, isn't exactly a hot take. But I mean, even after he admitted what happened, because they're saying they found out more and more information as the days went on, so clearly he didn't tell them the full picture straight away when he was confronted about it. Maybe he lied about the severity of the relationship he had with Alex, maybe he lied about how long it was going on for, but yeah, I mean, their trust must be in the fucking bin at that moment. Now, a lot of times throughout this podcast, they mention how they haven't even been able to live their normal lives for the past month, and they haven't actually had a chance to emotionally process what has actually happened.
That I really ever stopped to emotionally process it, and even still, I don't know that I have, because it was just, okay, we have to act. We have to go. This thing happened. How do we react accordingly? I understood the severity of the allegations against Ned. What was also just frustrating is how this decimated everything I've worked on for the last month. I have not done any wedding planning this past month. Like, I've had no time. I would wake up at 7 a.m., put the kettle on, and immediately open my email and start writing to lawyers for 30 days straight. And there's just like, okay, what's happening today? This changes this changes that.
And the funny thing is, I got a lot of comments on my previous video reacting to the Try Guys first video talking about this situation from people saying like, oh, they're just whinging, they're overreacting, it doesn't affect them this badly, like why they cry and all this stuff. Clearly it has affected them a lot. It's changed their whole entire month. They haven't been able to live their normal lives and have had to go through the stress of talking to lawyers non-stop to try and resolve this situation. Like, of course they're allowed to be angry. And the situation isn't as easy as, oh, Ned fucked up, let's just kick him out and live our lives. Like, he was the owner of the company. I imagine he had to be paid out of his contract, so he probably got a lot of money from this, I'd imagine. But also, you've got to make sure that you're doing everything legally, as the Try Guys go on to mention, that they had to make sure that they were legally allowed to kick him out of the channel.
There's a lot of legal issues you have to consider.
And knowing that if we, sorry to interrupt, that if we had any missteps whatsoever, we would be putting ourselves at risk in any which way, right? We didn't want to leave ourselves open for lawsuits if we were unjustly removing him or whatever what have you, right? Like, we just needed to make sure that we were doing things right, not saying the wrong thing, not doing something too early, making sure that we had really gone through this internal review before we took permanent action. Like, there's a right way and there's a rushed way, and we wanted to make sure we were doing it the right way.
And after they go through some of the legal stuff, they go on to mention the emotions they felt when they found out about the situation.
Yeah, it was shock. It was sadness that it happened, but it was also sadness for people involved. It was fear of our immediate futures and even potentially further futures, both as people and in career thing, and
And then they go to talk about the time where they're like, right, it could be made public any minute now. We've already removed Ned from the channel, like that's all done before it is made public. But they also had to warn people, like, look, this is gonna pop off, so just be prepared.
So to be clear, however this went down, we would have taken the same action. But the fact that it was something that was caught by fans, that was, a transgression that was enacted publicly, added a level of complication to this where we knew there was this stick of dynamite with an uncertain fuse. We knew that at any moment this could and would come out.
And then on Sunday, we woke up and we sort of saw on Reddit that some more people were talking about it. We're like, okay. At that point, we tried to alert parties involved that we think it's about to get really big and they should be prepared for that.
And you can only imagine what that time period must have been like, where they thought, right, this could go off at any minute, and you're just kind of waiting and waiting, because it probably got way bigger than any could ever have imagined. I mean, every news article in the world is talking about it. Pretty much every YouTuber in the world is talking about it. Everyone on Twitter is talking about it. Like, my videos on the Try Guy situation are some of my most viewed videos recently. Like, a lot of people clearly care about this situation, and I can imagine it was probably pretty overwhelming. And then they go into some more of the legal situation, and they're talking about how they need to make sure they aren't defaming Ned, like they're not lying about him so they can't get sued. They also mention how legally they weren't even allowed to tell their employees what had happened. They just had to say Ned left for personal reasons.
Anytime you say something publicly that puts someone else in a bad light, it is towing the line of defamation. Defamation is a suable offense. So you have to really have things in line to legally be able to say some things.
Once we told the staff that Ned was stepping away, we made this announcement and that we were going to be editing him out of videos. They put the pieces together of what was happening. They're very intelligent. But we, from a legal perspective, were not allowed to tell them outright, hey, XYZ happened, here's what we're doing and why, because once we say that to our company, to our staff, it is now public information that can be shared into the world.
And then we get into their reactions to the public reactions. They mention how they don't want to be involved in drama anymore, even though they realise it's boosted their channel by numbers. They also mention how they feel anxious in public now because they feel like all these eyeballs are just staring at them, even if they're not. And then they also sarcastically fire a few jabs at the ex-BuzzFeed employees who decided to vent a little bit on Twitter.
I want to talk about the future. I also want to talk about drama as a thing, because what I've learned is that drama works. We've had more eyeballs on us now than ever. It's kind of wild. I mean, even though we're not releasing videos, or we hadn't been releasing videos, our views on the back end, people were watching us. And so I go, oh, that's why people make this their career. That's why they lean hard into drama. And what I've also learned is I want no fucking part in it.
I went to the grocery store and I was so anxious because I didn't want to talk to anybody. And I even though I'm sure people weren't actually looking at me, I felt like people were looking at me.
I'm glad that this experience gave former BuzzFeed employees the opportunity to vent their BuzzFeed trauma. That's what this moment's all about.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they had their moment.
And that last part there about the BuzzFeed employees is something that I mentioned in my video. Like, it was weird how they all just kind of came out and were saying stuff like, oh, are you even surprised? Like, we all knew this was coming. Like, why are you saying that? Like, surely if you know Ariel personally, you wouldn't make jokes saying, oh, we all knew this was coming. Like, why do you not tell her then? And then they go on to try and put in perspective how scary this situation can be for some people involved with the public backlash and how certain people have had death threats and whatnot.
And we're not talking about Ned right now. We're talking about the other people.
Yeah,
involved.
and that is really hard to have that much, and then you have to think of how many people are reaching out to you, but then how many people are reaching out to your family or the people that they know you, and now you don't know who's not talking about you. That's really traumatic and scary. That's really intense, and I don't think anyone can really imagine what that's like until it happens to them, and I hope it never happens to anyone. It can make you feel really like no one in the world likes you anymore, and that can be hard.
I know for a fact that people have received death threats because of this. I know that people, their past has been drudged up, and they've... Look, a bad thing happened, and we reacted accordingly and did what we had to do. Actions have repercussions, but
It would be a lot for the strongest person to handle.
And then we get back to like the emotional side and how they felt at the time, and they both mention how when they first found out about this, they felt like their career was over, like they'd ruined everything that they tried to build for the past 8 years.
One of the first, like when I finally stopped to try and process this, I was like, oh my God, 8 years of my legacy is gone. 8 years of content that I am so proud of, I'm now ashamed of, or I hate, or whatever. Like I had these really visceral thoughts.
I mean, yeah, in the first 2 weeks, it was like I was fearful that this had jeopardized everything. Yeah, for us.
Which obviously we now know isn't the case. Like, no one is really saying anything bad about the other 3 guys involved. Like, if anything, they're getting more love than they ever have. They're getting more views than they ever have. So it hasn't really affected the brand, but you can see where they're coming from. Like, before this is made public, you're just guessing how people are going to react, and who knows on the internet nowadays, right? Like, maybe there's another world where people just tie all 4 of them into the situation, and the fact that this situation even happened in the first place puts people off wanting to work with the Try Guys and wanting to watch Try Guys videos anymore. Like, what if they dealt with the situation worse than they did, and people weren't happy with how they dealt with it? Like, a lot of stuff could have went wrong. But this is where they go on to mention how Ned is doing a few little sly things to try and keep his reputation in a way. So when the Try Guys released their statement and Ned released their statement, they look very similar. They're on a white background, using the exact same font. Like, they look like they were made by the same people. And I just assumed that the same PR people at Try Guys made the statements for both people, and they just released them together, and it was kind of a planned out thing. But what they actually go on to mention in this podcast is that they didn't work together on the statements at all, and they think that Ned used the same font and made the statement look very similar to try and make people believe that they did work on the statement together, to try and make it seem as if they're on better terms than they are.
We shared what our statement was going to be. We did not have insight into what his statement was. I also want to say that we did not coordinate fonts. I believe that he saw ours and copied it.
That is our opinion.
And it is an opinion that I'm not happy about.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I'm like, you got to choose the same font
that was
that made it look like we wrote your... Come on, man.
It's my opinion that was on purpose. that was to a optimized result for him. That's my opinion.
And to be honest, they make a good point, right? It does seem like he clearly made the statements look very similar to try and help himself out in the situation. But also the fact that they're even like saying this and like talking about how they are pissed off at Ned for stuff like the font and whatnot, and they're being so honest about it. Clearly they're not on good terms with Ned. Like, maybe some people think that they are still on good terms behind the scenes, but they have to do what's right in the public eye. Like, clearly they're not on good terms. Now, if you remember, in one of my previous videos, I mentioned how a few of the Try Guys videos have started to get privatized, and I mentioned it because YB Chang was actually someone who edited a bunch of the videos, and she was upset that a bunch of her work had to be deleted. Now, I assumed that might be like a sponsor thing. Maybe sponsors reached out and told them to delete the videos because they didn't want to be involved anymore, but what they mentioned in the podcast is that they've privatized a few videos because it puts certain people who are involved, Alex and Ned, in a bad light by the way they act in said video.
There are a few videos that we went back and privatized because we felt they were insensitive to what's going on. And we thought this doesn't need to be added to the conversation anymore. It's like in retrospect, I don't like this feeling, and I feel like this puts a target on people even more. So I just let's just take these down for now. And
we've all seen these previous clips that in hindsight look really bad for Ned and Alex, right? Like the things they say, the way they act, like now we know the information, they don't look great. And in fact, as you're watching this video, I've actually just uploaded a video on my second channel reacting to a compilation of like videos, not the ones that have been privated, but videos of Ned and a little bit of Alex, but mainly Ned, that have just aged really badly. So if you do want to watch that, that'll be linked in the description. And this is where they go to mention a bunch of their staff. Like, they defend a lot of people who aren't even involved in a situation, but for some reason are getting a lot of backlash. And then they also mention how Ariel isn't going to be on the channel for a little while, even on her series that she has on the channel.
Yeah. Leave our fucking staff alone.
Yeah.
There's people who are obviously caught up in this because of their association with us, because of their association with the people involved. Back the fuck off.
Yeah.
Or I'll fight you. So You Can Sit With Us features our partners. Ariel is one of the cast members in that show. But this time we're gonna give her some time to focus on herself, and we'll let you know if that changes.
And this is where they're going to talk about their future of the channel. They mentioned how there's not a world where Ned will ever appear on Try Guys again. This is because he broke their trust and that it was actually a workplace violation. And then they also mentioned that there won't be a fourth Try Guys. I know there's rumors going around saying that someone else is going to be the new fourth Try Guy. They're just going to do it as a trio now.
If this hadn't gone public, was there a world where Ned came back and was a cast member?
No.
Yeah. And maybe speak to why.
No, what happened, it betrayed our trust. And
It was a workplace violation.
It was a workplace violation.
And that's that.
It would mean to all the people in our office who knew what they knew, they would know that we were in the face of everything, like not being true to who we say we are and our values. So like, very simply, he would have been removed.
Well, that's another rapid fire question. Are we going to have a new fourth Try Guy? No. We will have new people that come in and out. We obviously already have our buddy Kwesi, who we love, but I don't want to put the pressure on anyone to say, this is the new Try Guy and he is the replacement. That's not fair to them.
And yeah, there we have it. That is the Try Guys podcast talking about Ned Fulmer and the entire situation. They've handled it really well throughout this. I mean, that's not even a surprise anymore. Like, I knew going into this podcast that it was going to be done respectfully. They did go into a lot more detail than I expected, which, I mean, I'm very appreciative of. I mean, it got me a video. But also the transparency is nice, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of channels that if something like this happened, where they have these, like, mega companies, they wouldn't be this transparent. And they would do a lot of things behind the scenes, which is fine for them, but I like the stance they've took here. They were very honest and very transparent, and yeah, I don't think they could have handled it any better. But either way, let me know your thoughts on everything we spoke about in today's video, everything mentioned in the podcast, and I think I'm going to leave the video there. So if you did enjoy, please leave a like down below, subscribe if you are new. If you want to let me know topics to talk about in future videos, the best way to do that is on my Instagram. It's @MARKIE, it's always linked in the description. And now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go and lay in bed and hate my life to try and cure this hangover. Alright, in a bit.